We know how difficult it's been for many in Minnesota, but it also has been a chance to really get in depth when it comes to the difference between states' rights and federal rights. What is our democracy? Is our democracy in jeopardy with what's going on now? Lots of big thoughts. And one of America's most popular teachers on this area is a Minnesotan. Sharon McMahon from Sharon Says So has joined us before, and she's joining us live via video on our live stream here on YouTube and on X and Facebook. Sharon, it's so good to have you on. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, this is like in COVID when we said, what's the good part of this? There's nothing really good about this. But the level of interest that people have had in sort of some of these things that used to be nerdy stuff that you were only thinking about has been interesting, I'm sure. What are some of the biggest questions that you're getting from people who follow you on Sharon Says So?
People always want to know, can they do that? That's one of the biggest questions is, can they do that? Is it possible for them to defy 96 court orders in 1 month? And what happens when they do? So I think right now we are in a very challenging position where a lot of legal questions and tests of the American system of government are being pressed out, and we don't actually know how this ends in this moment.
Yeah, we just had a caller who said, can exactly what you said. Can they do that? And what happens if a judge, for example, comes forward? And we've had the threats, right? Like, oh, you've ignored 100 different court orders already.
Right.
Well, what happens if a federal court says, well, like they've said already, that the 5,000 or so people out there who are in the asylum process, so they came here legally, they are working through the process to see, do we get to stay or not? Do we get asylum or not? But a lot of those folks have been sort of detained or shipped off to Texas. So what happens, I guess, does the federal government have to do what the federal court says?
Well, the short answer is yes. That is how the system is set up. It is very much an honor system in which power is restrained by words on a page. Those words on a page are the Constitution and judges' orders. So the short answer is yes. The federal agencies like DHS, like ICE, are legally required to follow court orders. It is not an optional thing. But the question is, Jason, what happens when they don't, which is exactly what we're seeing in Minnesota right now, with 96 court orders at a low end of the spectrum being defied by the federal government over the last several weeks. So the problem becomes that the rule of law is constrained by an honor system in which federal agencies abide by the rules on a page set out in the Constitution and by judges' orders.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a fascinating sort of point. When people say our democracy is threatened right now, I'm kind of a calm, moderate person, Sharon. Like, I get a little like, that sounds like hyperbole. But when you have a case where you have one part of the government ignoring rulings that come from the judicial branch, it does strike me that it's not really unreasonable to say this is a crisis of democracy.
I'm with you, Jason. I've been known for over 5 years as I'm not somebody who thinks the sky is falling when something doesn't go my way. I've had faith for my entire life in the American system of democracy, the oldest democracy currently in the world. Our system of checks and balances has imperfectly, but nevertheless held for the last 250 years. But it's held on a system, a shared belief that we all have to do the right thing. So I hear what you're saying, that these are actually concerning things. And when I count up, or when I say 96 court orders being defied just in Minnesota in the month of January, that is a conservative tally put together by a Republican appointed judge, the chief of the federal court in the state of Minnesota. That's a Republican appointed judge who was a student of one of the bastions of conservative legal thought, Antonin Scalia. So this is not, and he said in this ruling, in which he delineated these 96 court orders that are being defied, that More court orders have been defied in the state of Minnesota in 1 month than in the entirety of some other federal agencies' existences.
Mm,
So your
yeah.
concerns, Jason, are not unfounded.
Sharon McMahon is with us. She's all over social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, breaking down sort of the bipartisan explanations here, trying to get us through some civic uncertainty as we're all working through. Yeah, the can they do that? And also this sort of question that we have right now where it's sort of county sheriffs trying to figure out like, well, what is cooperation with the federal government? Can the federal government just come into our streets? And I think a lot of us think about if you're speeding in Brooklyn Park and then you pass into Brooklyn Center or Minneapolis, like Brooklyn Park is probably not going to follow you into another municipality. We think
Mhm.
about these lines. And so it is weird to have federal agents sort of, and I know in some parts of our community, they don't realize this, but there are like the part of South Minneapolis I was in today, there are ICE agents walking around, driving around every day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can they do it?
Yeah.
Can they? They can. I guess they can.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question becomes, who's gonna stop them? That's really that becomes the question. If they're not going to be restrained by their own allegiance to the rule of law, who's going to stop them? And that really does put state and local law enforcement, who I do believe want to protect Minnesotans. Again, perhaps that it has been done imperfectly throughout their history, but I do believe that state and local law enforcement wants to protect Minnesotans, and they are being put in a really untenable position of trying to protect Minnesotans while also cooperating with federal immigration law. And it puts them in this position of trying to choose to whom their allegiance lies. And it forces them to be in this position where they have spent, in some cases, decades trying to earn the trust of the public, because
Right.
law enforcement requires the cooperation of the public,
Right.
and that can all be erased very quickly. So I don't envy the position that this puts state and local law enforcement in at all.
Sharon McMahon is with us. Sharon says so. Her website is sharonmcmahon.com. What worries you the most, and what gives you the most optimism today, as there was quite a bit of conversation this morning about a change in tactics and a change of approach?
I do think the change of in rhetoric is sorely needed. Whether or not it actually results in a change on the ground is TBD. But I do think cooling the temperature of the rhetoric is very much needed in this moment, and I think most Minnesotans welcome that. What concerns me the most is about whether or not um, the federal government is going to continue breaking the law to enforce the law. And that is something that is not, throughout our 250 years, has never been permitted. You cannot break the law to enforce the law. And I will tell you, I don't have optimism, but what I do have is hope. And those are two different things.
Mm.
Hope is a choice. Hope is an action. It is or as Brian Stevenson says, an orientation of the spirit. I have hope that Minnesotans are going to get through this. That Minnesotans are going to lead the way. That the North Star State is going to continue to point us in the right direction. I have hope in my fellow Minnesotans, and for me, that's enough to keep going.
I think that's a great place to end it. Sharon McMahon, so great to visit with you again. You can follow her on Instagram, Sharon Says So, and find her everywhere, all over the internet, making a difference in sort of your calm way of explaining things in a time when everybody's trying to be the loudest voice of the room. I think it's just so helpful for everybody. So I
Thank you,
appreciate what you're
Jason.
doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you.